The first reason, I suppose, is because he is a genuine working class guy, and for better or worse. And second, I haven't seen anyone anywhere who's been more unwavering in his commitment to reveal the atrocities of the grooming gangs in the UK, which are organized patterns of activity that are very pervasive, that are so terrible that it's almost impossible to talk about them without sounding like a conspiracy theorist. So now, there's no doubt that there are many things that you could accuse Tommy Robinson of, and many of those he would admit to. But to me, and also to my wife, fair enough. But the fact that he's pointed his finger at something that seriously needs to be attended to and has paid a major price for it is also not ignorable. It's like, do we expect someone who's brave enough to do that to also be perfect in every regard? That's asking a bit much, given that there's many people who in principle have moral characters much more unsullied than Tommy Robinson, who are cowering in silence constantly in the face of this absolute brutal atrocity. And so we interviewed him. And what did I think of Tommy? He's very articulate. He can certainly make a case for himself. And then I thought it was up to the audience to listen and to make their own judgment. Now, that was before the recent march that Robinson and his crew organized in London, which in my estimation, I'm interested in your perspective, went as peacefully and well as the protests in Ottawa, which it was modeled after. And so I thought his crew handled that extraordinarily well. Now, in the aftermath of those protests, of course, all sorts of chaotic hell has broken loose. And, why don't you are much closer to such things than me. I mean, being a denizen of that country, I'm looking from outside, trying to make sense out of it. But my sense at the moment is that the UK is somewhat of a tinderbox. And so...
Yes, and I wish it hadn't been so predictable. I wrote about this so many years, warned about it. The Strange Death of Europe was largely my last-ditch attempt to warn my own society of birth and other Western countries not to go down the path that they were precisely going down. And as a former government minister said in the Times a couple of days ago, the thing about my predictions on that was that I made them not with any glee, but in a spirit of deep lamentation about what was about to happen to my society. And as I see it, Tommy Robinson's a very interesting example of this whole thing. But let me just explain how I see it. This whole conflagration of recent days it started when a 17-year-old went into a Taylor Swift dance class a couple of weeks ago now and started hacking at young girls with a knife. Killed 3 girls, 9-year-olds, thereabouts, wounded many others. And the news of that came out, and a very typical modern British, modern European, modern Western thing happened, which was that in the aftermath, people started to suspect something was being kept from them. Now, wiser heads would wait, but not everyone's a wise head after 9-year-old girls are bludgeoned to death, stabbed to death. So false information went out online saying that the attacker was had arrived on one of the many boats of illegal migrants that come across the English Channel every week. That was untrue. In fact, he was the son of immigrants from Rwanda. But people started to sense that there was a cover-up of some kind, or at least the news was being managed. The police in Britain seem always to think they're being very clever at this, and it's always seemed to me that they exacerbate every problem they put their mind at first. The young man was originally from Cardiff, capital of Wales, and people just sense there's something they're holding from us, sure enough.
Axel Rudikabana already faces 3 charges of murder, 10 charges of attempted murder, and 1 charge of possession of a knife, all relating to the incident at Hart Street on the 29th of July 2024. The 2 further offences relate to evidence obtained by Merseyside Police during searches of Axel Rudikabana's home address, as part of a lengthy and complex investigation which has been ongoing since the 29th of July. The additional charges are the production of a biological toxin, namely ricin, contrary to Section 1 of the Biological Weapons Act 1974, and possession of information, namely a PDF file entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual, likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing to commit an act of terrorism, contrary to Section 58 of the Terrorism Act 2000.
Unpleasant, ugly, and again, evil forces can get unleashed at such a time, the spirit of revenge. And some protests started peacefully at first, then some violent. A mosque was targeted nearby, and then violence started to spread out to other towns. Then Muslim communities started to arm up, in some cases literally, with people turning up with knives to defend their areas. This is all, and maybe it'll die down by the time this podcast has gone out, or maybe it'll get a lot worse. One thing you can say with absolute certainty is it's not going to go away, because all of this is the consequence of what I call the problem of primary and secondary problems. The primary problem in the UK, as in Europe in recent years, has been the total unwillingness of the political and other classes in the UK to address deep, deep concerns of the public. And when people said in recent days, how could anyone leap to such a conclusion that the attacker would be, and you go, because everyone's seen this before. You know, people don't actually forget very fast. The media class may, but they don't forget very fast that it's only 7 years ago that the son of Libyan migrants to the UK went and detonated a suicide bomb at an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. They don't forget fast that 3 people who had no right to be in the UK, including one whose asylum claim had been rejected, but who was nowhere near being deported, went across London Bridge in 2017, hacking at the throats of passers-by and shouting Allahu Akbar. They don't forget that, they notice it. But the British government and others have had this very, very clear policy that they don't really know what to do to tackle that. They don't know what to do really to tackle the grooming gangs issue. There was another set of prosecutions the other day, and another case is coming to court in the coming weeks. You could say, well, they clearly do, they're using the law, but a lot of the public say, well, not fast enough and not really. There's an awful lot of rapists still walking around with girls who are their victims in the same towns. What are you allowed to do about this or say about this? Now, if you're me, for the time being, you're allowed to write about it sometimes. You're allowed to speak about it sometimes. You're allowed to raise alarms sometimes. You're allowed to speak your mind somewhat. But if you're a Tommy Robinson character, if you grow up in Luton and you haven't had many advantages in life and you've had quite a lot of disadvantages and you're white and working class, what are you allowed to do about this? What are you allowed to say about any of this? And the government, for decades now, has had the attitude, you're not allowed to do anything. You're not allowed to say anything. You can't do anything because if you do, we'll call you a racist and we'll call you far right.
It's an effective epithet, you know, like when I first came across your work, and I've seen this reaction in the depths of my soul to many people. When I first came across your work, which is quite a long time ago now, you know, I was leery of it. And I think the reason for that is that it's something like this, is that there are a lot of people in the world. And I'm not going to be able to meet all of them or read all of them or have anything to do with all of them. And now and then some of them get tarred with some epithet. Well, the cost to me of accepting that tarring is very low on average, because if I don't pay attention to some person, there's a whole bunch of other people I could pay attention to. So it's not like the pool of people to attend to shrinks, right? And that epithet of far right is a very effective brand of tarring. And it's even effective among people who are very skeptical of such
and
things.
it's especially easy to demolish a reputation for people who do not have, as it were, a backlog of published work.
Yeah, right,
I mean,
exactly.
it's relatively easy, but to weigh up someone's views and make an estimation of them if they have 7 books to their name, as I do, or thousands and thousands of articles. But it can't be the case that only book authors are allowed to say anything about the disintegration of their societies.
No.
How does mass immigration affect GDP? ChatGPT. Mass immigration can have several effects on a country's GDP, both positive and negative. Here are some key points to consider. Positive effects. Labor supply. An influx of immigrants increases the labor force, which can boost productivity and economic output. More workers can lead to more goods and services produced, contributing to higher GDP. Consumer demand. Immigrants often contribute to increased demand for goods and services, as they participate in the economy by purchasing food, housing, and other essentials. This increased consumption can stimulate economic growth. Innovation and entrepreneurship. Immigrants can bring diverse skills and perspectives, fostering innovation and entrepreneurship. Many successful startups are founded by immigrants, contributing to economic dynamism and job creation. Filling labor gaps. Immigrants often fill jobs in sectors where there are labor shortages, such as agriculture, healthcare, and technology. This can enhance overall productivity and efficiency in the economy. Negative effects. Wage pressure. In some cases, an increase in labor supply may put downward pressure on wages, particularly for low-skilled workers. This can affect income levels for certain segments of the population. Public services strain. A sudden influx of immigrants can strain public services, such as healthcare and education, if the infrastructure is not equipped to handle the increased demand. This could lead to higher public expenditure. Integration challenges. Successful integration of immigrants into the economy and society can be complex. If integration is not managed well, it can lead to social tensions and economic disparities. Overall impact on GDP. The overall impact of mass immigration on GDP is context-dependent. Economies that are better prepared to integrate immigrants and leverage their skills tend to see more significant positive effects. Studies generally suggest that, in the long run, immigration contributes positively to GDP growth, although the benefits may not be evenly distributed across all segments of society. ChatGPT